Hey there, listener. Welcome to the Deep Share Podcast. I'm your host, Andy Rouse, and for the last couple of decades, I've slowly been opening my eyes to a very different world than the one I grew up hearing about. And the more conversations I have with interesting people, the more mystifying this world becomes. So without further ado, let's get deep.
We've got science to celebrate! Demons, listen out! Octopus, baby, come on!
There is rebellion in the wind. It will be crushed.
Everything I've said is true. It's real.
Dinosaur fossils? God put those here to test our faith.
A damn lie. I saw them with my own eye.
Did IQs just drop sharply while I was away?
We did illusions, man! None of it is true!
I'm not insane.
This is mass madness, you maniac! In God's name, you people are the real thing! We are the illusion!
Welcome to the Wicked Planet Podcast, episode 136. We are coming at you once again from the haunted garage, an undisclosed location known to nobody but myself and Ron, and all the guests are always bagged over the head and driven around in circles relentlessly until they vomit. We are coming at you from the vast misty hills, rolling tides, lakes, streams, forests, rivers, plenty of sunshine where your dreams come fucking true. So listen up. In studio tonight, we have the worst guests on planet Earth you've ever heard of. First, in the right corner, we have the bantering banshee himself, the long-haired man who stands with Palestine.
Oh, Jesus. Trades for Palestine.
The stoned philosopher hailing all the way from the shadows of Mordor.
Oh.
Andy from the Deep Share Podcast. I hope I got that right. What's up, motherfucker?
You got that correct.
In the left corner, the bald-headed wizard occultist himself. He looks like he is a Freemason with all of his gang tattoos and knuckle tattoos. He also looks like he could be part of some kind of crazy New York, gang where they would cut your cheeks open for any reason they wanted to. Quite essentially, he's kind of scary looking, I'm not going to lie. Some know him as the Fallen Patriot, others as the Fallen Angel. Also, in studio tonight, the New York Patriot. What's up, you sexy beast?
What's going on, man? That was an amazing intro.
Oh, my God.
Thank you. That was great.
But before we get to all of that, you know him as Ron from New England. Others know him as the Clam Hamburglar. Some as Camel Toe Harris's personal vibrator.
Speechless. I'm sorry.
But his friends and family know him best as the gigantic Jewish gay polar bear who stands with Israel.
Trades for Palestine.
Ron, what's going on?
Well, that was probably the most lengthy introduction you've ever had to do.
Did I miss anything? Did I leave anything out? Did I cover all my bases?
No, that was really... Hey, listen, real excited for tonight's show.
It's going to be good.
We got the New York Patriot, got in his car, drove all the way to the haunted garage.
Yes. Special. Makes us feel special.
Really good to
really
see you, man. And of course, everybody knows my buddy Andy from the Deep Share Podcast.
Dude.
And we're all in studio. We're not doing Zoom. We're not doing none of that.
But we are getting high and getting by.
There you go.
Drinking beer.
I got to tell you, this studio is superb.
Oh, this is... Yeah.
You like all the gold plating that we put up? And,
I can't believe you built an entire room out of gold.
Yeah,
I don't
know.
understand where
it's
you're
insane.
getting the
You should see the
profits
toilet.
I've seen it. I used it. It was incredible.
We had to downgrade and use silver a little bit because, we ran out of funds.
Well, just the lid is silver.
Well, it's just the lid. But still.
I think it's actually better looking than Tim Pool's studio.
Yeah.
Oh, is it? You think so? I mean,
Absolutely.
We got the silver toilet seat.
Well, he collects the shit and just keeps it there, which is very weird.
Right. I think all the shit's under his beanie. That's why he never takes it off.
I mean, that's why he's full of shit.
Right.
If that's what we're getting, yeah.
He definitely stands with Israel. He's definitely funded by Israel, I say.
All right,
I don't
we're
know.
not even
Maybe
going to
he's
get
not.
into that discussion.
Well, no, let's do it. Let's get into it. No, what do you guys think about the whole Gaza-Israel thing?
Oh, my God. Well, from my podium,
30
I
seconds,
must say.
go.
I think I'm going to skip that.
All right, we'll cut it out. We'll cut it out.
I don't
This
want.
being a ghost hunting show, I think we need to take this issue very seriously.
Well, I think we should try to make, ghosts, line up with the Gaza-Israel conflict in some way.
It has to.
Because all conspiracy theories connect.
Well, it's not even
So-
just conspiracy
they're
theories, right? I mean, we
creating a
have
lot
to
of-
make the academic and mainstream theory of everything kind of line up with that as well.
Exactly.
I mean, we have to have it there.
So if everything's connected, ghosts in Israel and Gaza have to be connected.
Yeah.
Well, they're making ghosts over there right now.
Right, with all the bombs.
Boy, oh
right?
yeah.
Ooh.
Hey, you know what? In
Too
all
soon, too
in all
soon.
seriousness, I actually thought of that about all the people that were like traumatically killed in Gaza.
What if you had like energy harvesting?
What? Yeah, I mean, what if? What is going to happen with all the bad juju that's going on there? I don't know.
It's probably going to become the next Native
Just gonna
American.
skip over the pond and end up over here.
It's going to become like a Native American burial
jump
ground. It's
back
going to be
and forth.
cursed. That's what it's going to be.
These petty elite humans, they're always just trying to outdo nature. And I feel like nature was the original traumatic experience that happened that created all these factions and fear and isolation and mine versus yours. Like just the horrors of a flood or an impact or something like that. The trauma that passes down through generations, man, that's what creates elites and all this crazy shit.
Generational trauma. You sound.
Kinda. It's kind of new age, but not at all, because like the new age takes it and fucking obscures it.
You
like
sound
crazy.
like you sound like that woke girl in that video.
Which one?
Where she was getting arrested.
Was it really a girl?
It was a chick. She identified as non-binary.
Oh my god, was she
And
on a
she-
plane talking about reptilians? or
No,
something?
she was getting arrested for being drunk and driving down the wrong way.
Yo,
of
this
the
dude,
fucking-
oh, you're
of
the
the
one dude
highway.
that plays
I
the
saw that.
Flash, right?
No, I don't know. But she literally was like, she's like, I suffer. She was telling the cop, I suffer from social anxiety and generational trauma. As an indigenous person, and he's just
Dear
like,
fucking
That's
God.
just-
he's
that
just
was
like,
disturbing.
bitch, you're
I
wasted.
definitely don't mean it generational
That was
trauma that
disturbing.
way.
He's
No,
like,
no,
bitch, you're wasted. You're getting arrested.
Well, I think just like everything else, right? You can take the term generational trauma and you can put it in the hands of like idiots, and
Anyone.
it'll be used.
Right, yeah.
idiotically,
I mean, I
But
think-
in the sense that like things get passed down. Like if you were in a more survival state than your future generation, you're going to hand that down to them in some way or not. You know?
Right. Yeah. I mean, I don't know. Do you believe in generational trauma, Ron, or what do you think?
I, in all seriousness, I think there's something to it, and it's just always it's going to be one person to break that cycle, right? But
Fuck yeah, and the family too.
But I was having this discussion with my wife this morning about generational fuck offs and how families will go. And I was kind of describing somebody that I can't bring up, but they start out in families that have sucked off the system. They've taught all their kids how to suck off the system. Then they have little kids and they teach them how to suck off the systems. It's like, dude, why don't you just get a fucking job and break out of that system?
Is that generational trauma or sleaziness? Because when I think about generational trauma, I think of like when they say, the whole racist with like the black slavery stuff. It's like, oh, that supposedly carries over from the slave days to, newer generations of blacks that are suffering from general trauma. Trauma.
I don't know about that.
I mean, but that's what I think that
I understand,
whole word means.
Yeah.
Oh,
So-
I take generational trauma to mean like we got hit by a fucking rock at some point in history and everyone on the planet suffered.
I think it's a slap in the face to people that are actually in that situation.
Right. Like in
I'm
absolutely.
totally honest with you.
Yeah, like what do you mean? Can you
Well, for someone to be like, I have generational trauma because my great-great-great-grandfather was a slave, you'll never know what the fuck that's even like.
Oh, yeah.
Okay, yeah.
And never.
Don't even act like you do because you'll never will.
Yeah, right, exactly.
Well, that's what gets me when they're all lining up for their reparations, right? But,
Yeah, I don't know.
Who's
Whatever.
they?
Yeah, what do you mean by that, Ron? That sounds racist.
Jesus.
You can't say they anymore. You can't
Well,
say them.
well,
only
appar-
if you're part of the
Maybe he's talking
LGBTQ
about
plus.
apparently, I'm racist, anyways, according to some Spotify.
Oh
listeners.
yeah, you should bring that up. That's funny.
Did you get my lighter?
What?
All right.
What happens? What happened, Ron?
We
You
had
got
an
accused of being
episode.
racist?
It was our last episode.
What did you
and
talk about?
We were talking about these in jail.
You were in jail talking about what?
We weren't in jail, but I was watching this show. It's called Jailbirds, and they do this. It's a men's prison that's underneath a women's prison. So the way that they talk to each other is through the toilets. So it's like they holler down. They're like, "Yo, Jamal, there, I gotta talk. I'm hit him up on the bowl." And then he's like, "Yeah, Laquanda, you up there?
Whoa.
What's
Why
up,
are they
baby
all
girl?"
Irish?
What? That's Irish? What's up, baby girl? We going out tonight? Yeah, man, we're going out tonight.
So
And
anyways,
they said it was racist because we were impersonating black people. That didn't sound racist to me.
we never said they were black.
But
Because you used the name Jamal, which
Right.
could have been a Muslim,
you assumed.
and I used the name Laquanda.
You assumed.
Somebody just assumed, and
Isn't that racist that they were just assuming?
And just for a fact, the people that were on the show were all blacks. So.
Right. So the people in the show are all black,
but we're the racist
But
ones.
we're the racist. But also, too, the person who wrote that, who listens to the show, first of all, stop listening to the show immediately because it's just going to get more racist throughout time. That's one of our goals. That's one of our marketing points, to become more racist. Second of all, they're all black, and you're racist because you were assuming that they were all black. The people that we're talking about, just from the dialects and the accents.
Oh,
that
they
we
said,
use.
it couldn't have been Becky or Jim or whatever, something.
We never once
So
said
what are you?
they
So
were
what are you
black.
saying? Are you racist against white prisoners?
Me?
No, the lady that whoever recorded.
You
no.
motherfucker.
God.
You, Eddie. No,
Ron looked right at me.
I know, Ron, but we never said they were black in the episode.
No.
That listener just assumed.
Yeah, that was
That's
assumptions.
where her imagination took it.
Assumptions of racism.
So the word on the street is that you're pretty racist.
Oh,
So
dude.
can you talk about that a little bit?
Absolutely, I can talk about
All right,
it.
let's hear it.
Well, I like to discuss ancient history, and I like to follow like anthropology and what it says about who came before who and who was where and what languages were they speaking and where were they migrating to and from and stuff like that. And
Yeah.
apparently that talking about that kind of stuff just lands you in like racist territory because, it's just weird stuff going on in ancient history that people don't want you talking about. It's just weird.
Yeah, the whole thing about people not wanting anybody to look at the shit that Graham Hancock's going through.
Oh, no,
yeah.
I see.
Yeah.
I see. I'm
Yeah.
against most of what Graham
No.
likes to do.
No, hold on, no.
Are you really?
What
Yeah, I
I'm-
mean, he does a couple good things. I mean, whether he's in the dark or a fucking controlled person, whatever, I don't know.
Yeah. It's hard to
Besides the fact either he's wrong or he's right or he's close, point is, he's getting attacked by a lot of people
Absolutely.
for putting out any type of information that goes against the mainstream collegiate narrative
Sure.
on ancient archaeology or ancient anthropology
He's
or
being
whatever.
labeled anti-Semitic too.
Well, really?
really?
Is
Which-
that happening? Because
yeah.
if that's the case, I might wonder what he's saying now.
Which does
you
it?
know?
But that's like the old the thing they categorize people that come out with like certain types of material. You know, they get labeled as anti-Semitics, whether
Well, sure,
they write
sure.
books or like whatever it is. But that's like, and you have to wonder why. Why
well,
is
for
that?
me, it's like if you have a special on Netflix or a series, for Christ's sakes, on Netflix of all places, like Brandeis, like
Jewflix is what I call it.
Oh,
but-
geez, that's pretty intense. But
Just
I mean,
saying.
when you trace the fundamentals of where it comes from and the family it's connected to,
Yeah.
it's like, well, why is he allowed to have this? Ooh, revealing the truth series on Netflix. Why is it on the
100%.
biggest, most corporate whatever there is? You know, and I pointed out a long time ago that it's interesting that none of the places he goes, none of the excavation sites he goes to have anything to do with ancient European or Scandinavian or anything in the Northern Hemisphere for the most part.
Yeah.
It's all, you know.
Yeah, see, to me, Andy, that's the most important thing. You know,
Now I sound like a Nazi.
no,
L'chaim!
And let me just say, I only accidentally have done that or have wandered into that territory because I was trying to disprove ancient aliens. I found humans, but I found it in weird places. You know,
Andy,
and
you can't accidentally be a Nazi.
I'm not
Come
trying
on.
to accidentally. I'm just saying.
You're doing it with intent, and it's disgusting. You disgust me.
Buckley, I'm trying to live up to your
I'm
expectations.
sick.
here,
We should
man.
just end the episode right now.
but the point is, it's like Andy, when you're doing like your Bach Saga stuff and this other stuff that you're getting into, that like that to me is really way more interesting because of our family's Norman / Viking ancestry or whatever.
Yes, we're brothers. That's right.
And all this, and all the old stories that we used to read about old Norse myths and how we celebrate Norse celebrations right towards the end of December. You know what I mean? So to me, that's way more interesting. But what we came here to talk about tonight is ghost. Oh. And we are going to be doing a ghost investigation led by Mr. New York Patriot.
Oh. Hell yeah.
So we did a walk around. He got here early this afternoon. We did a walk around. What was it different than what you imagined it was going to be like when you were thinking on your way here?
Oh, yeah. First off, the property was a lot bigger. There was more than one place. And between that, I guess just the size of it and the graveyard. Actually, what I envisioned with the graveyard was nothing that I was expecting to see when I got here. Which is like, I'll be totally honest, even if we don't get anything tonight, it was actually just pretty cool to fucking check out that graveyard. But, yeah, once I saw the graveyard, besides just it was bigger than I expected, the walls and, like, the rocks around it, I was just like, yo, that's weird.
Creepy, eh?
Well, only because I guess, like, recently, I might have been watching something on TV where they were just like showing again like the size of blocks, and it's like, how the fuck did these things get from one place to the next? And I'm like looking at these like small little walls, and I'm just like, I would never want to spend the time or the energy to even move these fucking blocks.
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
I was like, I understand like 50 years ago you didn't have a cell phone, so I was like, all right, I'm bored, I'll just build a fence out of rocks, I guess. But like that took time and effort, man.
It's a stone wall, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, stone walls in New England are pretty common. They're like everywhere. You'll be like, because I hike and I'll do bushwhacking shit, and you'll come across stone walls just like out in the middle of nowhere.
Out in the middle of nowhere.
And you're like,
off the trail.
Right, and you're like, what the fuck is this doing out here? But I mean, it makes sense if it was like, agricultural land a long time ago, and they set their borders, they set their markers, and then it just overgrows and trees get in there. But and then it becomes forest. But like, it's a pretty common thing around here. You'll see that everywhere. You probably see it in Mass a lot too, right?
We do, but the weird thing is it does connect to some interesting places, especially in Massachusetts. In Upton, Massachusetts, there's a supposed, what we believe is a Druidic temple.
Oh.
And that's not a popular belief, of course. Like, people think, well, maybe this is lining up with equinoxes and things like that for, maybe more minor reasons than druids being here and stuff like that. But, I mean, when you get into ancient history and alternative history and considering what might have been over here in North America, it's not too far off when you think of Amaru and Amaruka.
Who?
Yeah, so I can't remember which tribe it was near, like the Mayans, but someone had Amaru as their god, their sun god.
Okay.
But of course, it was all serpent worship. It was all serpent symbolism, and Amaru Ka was North America, and it was the land of the plumed serpent. So this was basically the echo of Quetzalcoatl, Kukulkan from the Aztec, Viracocha, Ahura Mazda, going to the Persian Gulf, you have the Anunnaki. It's all the same serpent symbolism, the Naga from Egypt. It's all this serpent symbolism, but you have in America the land of the plumed serpent, Amaruka. So it's like, okay, what's going on there? And have you guys ever heard of that book, I think it's called Mystic Masonry or something like that, or Oriental Mystic Masonry? There's a quote in there talking about when Egypt and America, the continents of each, were one and the same.
Right. I mean, lots of times people forget that, like, Freemasons, masonry, right, stonework, and then you see like all the architecture and like all that stuff, and you draw the connection and the tie between the two.
Absolutely, yeah.
But lots of times, people just think Freemason secret society, which they are, and they're probably fucked, but they kind of forget about the masonry stonework
architecture,
right, side of things, which
mathematics.
So you think the stone walls in New England are possibly tied to some sort of serpentry Freemasonry work?
Maybe. I mean, I think Freemasonry would be more new than like the specific term.
Yeah,
right?
I think so too.
Rosicrucianism predates Masonry. Like they say they find roots of Freemasonry at Pompeii, but it's like, well, what are you defining as Freemasonry? You know, it's like the worship of the Rosy Cross, which is worship of the starfire, which is a very ancient mythological folklore thing.
There's like somebody who I'm covering now. His name is, interesting enough, Michael Meyer. And he's from like the 1500s, and like they credit him to. He even put out like the 6 laws of Rosicrucianism.
Really?
So I'm like, that even showing you right there, like it's not as there's a lot of stuff before these orders that we're always pointing our fingers at.
Absolutely.
You know what I'm saying? That's stuff that goes way beyond that.
It's also convenient, right?
Like
we can point to
like Freemasonry and all that stuff is to me is more of New Age.
Why is there a lot of Native Americans that have lodges?
Ooh.
Yeah, that's something I always thought of. They called it their places lodges.
And their mythology and their history is synonymous, they say. Their spiritual world and the real world.
Yeah, that's something.
The same.
That's something I want to get into, but
I'm not trying to detract from what we're doing tonight. I think this is pertinent stuff.
This is interesting. No, this is interesting because
I'm on my own personal interest to find Bigfoot on your goddamn property, man. So hopefully this is going to just be included. You know,
might get Knoxville out there.
So you talk about how like us that grew up in New England have lived here our whole lives pretty much. Looking at these stone walls is totally normal. Like we don't even look at them twice. Like we're just so used to seeing them, right?
They're everywhere.
But it all comes back to the times when people say like, "Oh my God, this stuff was underneath our feet the whole time, and we never gave it a second thought."
Right.
But when Nick and I were up in the cemetery, I go, "Look at them base stones, and they are absolutely huge."
Yeah.
Now, that would have been, like, we were kind of pondering, how was that, first off, where did the rocks come from?
I didn't even think of that at first, and then I was like, it was some big pile you just pulled from?
Yeah, so and how
where do we even get the rocks?
And how the story goes, it's, when they're plowing the fields and when they're doing this, X, Y, Z, they're pulling up all these stones, and instead of just putting them in a big pile, they used them to make walls. Now,
it's bullshit.
To me, that's just not even remotely plausible, right? But you look at these walls. Now, this property is the property obviously is millions of years old, but I'm saying just this homestead is over 200 years old. And I'm thinking to myself, and I'm looking at these rocks, that doesn't necessarily mean that them walls weren't there to begin with.
Right.
Like we don't, and this is the whole thing, you can't carbon date walls. You can't, rocks or stone. So it's like, you got, and all these rocks are made out of granite. Of course, it's New Hampshire. It's the granite state. Every piece of rock that comes out of the ground is your 99% chance that it's going to be granite.
Digging post holes here is
insane.
Awful.
Yeah. You can't even dig a foot into the ground. But the thing is, like I was showing NY here, when we were up in the cemetery, we found a big rock that's like white quartz.
No shit.
Because quartz runs with granite. Wherever there's granite, there's quartz. I've got a big granite rock sticking out of the ground at my house, and it's got a vein of quartz that's probably about 6 inches wide that goes through the whole thing.
Same thing with the White Mountains up further north of you guys, where I go climbing all the time. It's just there's tons of quartz everywhere, running veins through all the granite, all the way up the tops of the mountains.
Quartz is supposed to be very energy harnessing.
Absolutely.
The guy we had on that talked about the scalar light stuff and the whole Nikola Tesla towers and stuff. The center of his he made these micro Nikola Tesla towers, and in the middle of them it was just like a quartz stone cylinder thing. So it's supposed to be really crystally energy harnessing.
Yeah, well, you got clear quartz. Now the quartz that's here is not clear quartz. It's white quartz.
But there's a difference.
But the thing is, it's like I've always understood that granite holds some form of energy as well, right? And so we already know that quartz does. And I was explaining, we have this weird anomaly here that kills car batteries or kills batteries in general.
It's called winter.
In short time. If a car sits out in this yard for more than a week, I got to go out with my jump pack and jump start it.
Oh, really? Like a good car?
Yeah.
Oh, really? That's fucking weird.
There's something in the ground. And I'm not the only one that says that, because the garage up the street asked me about it when they moved in. Because they would have cars out there for a couple of weeks and the freaking batteries would go dead in them, right? And I'm like, yeah, that's just how it is around here. You should have plenty of jump packs around for moving customers' cars. But another thing that I brought that up is New England is also associated as having a lot of ghost activity, a lot of paranormal activity. And I often wondered if there was a connection to all the paranormal activity here in the amount of granite that we have in the ground, exposed on top of ground. I mean, I would like to measure how many feet of stone wall we have just on this property. And at my property, a mile from here, there's 2 separate lots, and they're all bounded by stone walls. And if you go a half a mile out into the woods, in the middle of nowhere, like what Buckley was saying, you're going to run into a stone wall. They are literally everywhere. You can't walk, I don't know,
2 feet.
Quarter of a mile, and you're going to hit another stone wall.
And, being from Massachusetts, like I come from the state below you, and the rock walls not only continue down there, but they actually continue from state to state. Because there's many trails, like hiking trails that go from Massachusetts to New Hampshire that follow some of these, and they come up off and on while you're going from state to state. Like, this is everywhere up here. And I can only imagine that whatever this was, we'd probably find remnants of it probably down the coast all the way down to Florida. And maybe in other parts of the United States as well, but we may not recognize it as connected to our stone walls.
Right.
I wonder if the mountains tie into that shit.
Dude, that's what I was kind of thinking.
Like, they're the mountains, because oftentimes, like...
no, he meant mounds.
Oh, it was mounds. Well, mounds, mountains,
you know what?
either
the
one.
Mountains, too, because we have a lot of mountains up here that people don't ever talk about.
Right,
because
but
they're smaller than Colorado and Alaska.
But think about how the pyramids are like, supposedly energy conductors, right?
Absolutely.
Like,
so are the mounds.
Mounds could possibly be. And, you get into all the ancient cultures and whatever you want to believe about giants living in mountains or being mountains.
And where they live.
Or people going underground in the mountains, right? It's like, well, who's to say those aren't some sort of energy conductors themselves?
Well, also, what I've heard is that pyramids and mounds, like mounds, pyramids, mountains. Like
right.
The ideology, like maybe the Great Pyramid in Egypt is all those mathematical impossibilities. That's fine. But the symbolism is the mount.
Right.
The mountain.
Right.
Something about that. And we point to gods and aliens. That's fine. But there's a human aspect to the history behind the mount and the mountain as well. To eliminate a certain aspect of the mythology and the folklore that's kind of handed down to us. Like, oh, you experienced something. Where do you look for the answers? In the books you've been handed. But that doesn't take away from the actual raw phenomenon of interacting with whatever the fuck is going on in this weird kind of permeable reality that we exist in 3D. Because we definitely have access to something that's like beyond 3D, but I think we have a lot of convenient or elusive or distracting explanations given to us.
Everywhere.
Those realms.
I think that's
to keep us away from the authentic.
A big aspect of like what we quote unquote call a matrix or like the elite system is to like withdraw you from the natural world.
It has to look close.
Bring you into the matrix, right? And then so that way you're just focused and putting your energy into that versus anything that's reality based or natural or like spiritual or the cosmic world, because the elites, when I say they, whomever you think the elites are,
whatever the they is,
it's plenty of speculations, but they're trying to keep society, humanity as a whole away from that as much as they can. And that's why you get the Kardashians, the Netflix, everything, drugs, pornography, whatever you want to say, all this shit, shitty food, all this stuff, just pulling you away from that. So
I love that shitty food.
You'll never figure it out. You'll never figure it out. That's what they want, I feel like.
Well, see, the thing is, I think, of course, New England, us New Englanders, we are kind of biased to that. Like, but just say in the Northeast, like because even in upstate New York, you got like stone walls and things like that. I've spent a lot of time up there. I think that this section of this country sets itself apart for any type of like weird high strangeness that's going on, because I am a firm believer that the Vikings were in what is New England, what is the Canadian Maritimes, even the province of Quebec, and New Brunswick is considered a maritime. And just because I've traveled there a lot, and you see a lot of weird stuff, and it's like America's Stonehenge we have here in New Hampshire.
Yeah.
Like that whole site, right? We need to do a trip to that sometime.
That's a good location for a little field trip for a podcast.
Yeah, but the point is, it's like you see lots of weird stuff, and then you see all these stone walls. Like these stone walls could have been here for 1,000 years, for all we know. I mean, these stone walls, these stone. Okay, but I'm saying these stone walls may have been built by a civilization that was here way before the Puritans came. And you know, when it's really interesting, it's too bad they didn't have better
scribblers.
Well, better records.
Note takers.
You know, jotting this stuff down, being observant about it. You know what I mean? It's like, oh, we just came across this, and then now it has all these stone walls, and everybody here is like, well, that's just a boundary to the property. Okay, that may have been what they used to split the properties up, because they're like, well, we got all these different lots. They're all surrounded by stone walls. Let's just say, you know, like when England came here and divvied it all up and said, okay, you know, before America was America, saying, okay, well, this lot is bounded by stone walls. That's nice and simple. There's no way you can argue that. And that's actually a thing here, even in town. Like that's your boundary. And we don't care what a surveyor says. I had a surveyor come up on my land, and he was surveying, trying to get enough road frontage for the piece of land next to me. And he's over on the other side of my wall. I'm like, dude, fucking pull your pin, because that's not going to go there. Because your boundary does not fucking jump my stone wall. My stone wall is the fucking boundary.
Old
and that's
school, baby.
Your boundary.
Oh, yeah.
And he did. He pulled it up and he fucking moved it. Because it's like, you're not. And then the owner of the property comes over and says, oh, hey, Ronnie, would you sell me 30 feet? I said, no, get the fuck out of here with that.
I'll kill you, motherfucker. I'll kill you, bitch.
I'm like, no,
I'll bury bodies before, motherfucker.
I'm not going to
make my property line.
I said, that is unheard of in this state.
Right.
Yeah.
The stone wall is the boundary line. But
old school rules.
What was it 1,000, 5,000, 10,000 years ago? That's the question.
What
I want to know.
The thing, Ron, where you said like the whole taking notes and stuff. Why didn't people like take better? Maybe they did. You know, maybe there was.
That could be.
Yeah, we were talking about the Vatican, right? Earlier?
Right. They squashed it, or it's hidden away somewhere for whatever reason. We don't know.
Right.
Everybody blames the the Smithsonian, right? Everybody, the Smithsonian takes everything. It's like, well,
maybe
if you look into some of those stories, it's kind of silly. It's like not foolproof that the Smithsonian came in and stole everything, like the Men in Black. Yeah. You know, it's like a little flimsy. So it's like it's probably a bunch of institutions, because it's not like the movies where it's a bunch of people trying to keep the ultimate secret. They're just trying to keep their jobs. Yeah. It's just all
they have to justify their means. Yeah,
it's all pecking order. Yeah, but the fucking New England things about like the stone walls being property lines, like that is the official narrative. Like any teacher will tell you that, but it's absolutely anthropologically false,
right?
Because they were already there.
Because these stone walls are so old, it was probably before people were even like Europeans were even here.
Absolutely,
that's my theory.
The secondary explanation that they give is, like, oh well, then in that case it was Native Americans. All right, so just shut up. That's it.
I mean, there's the last history side of everything, right? Where it's like,
of course,
there's so much that's just hidden, but also too, the thing is like, like the graveyard that you guys are talking about. That's like way up there on your property. There's other graveyards that are just way out in the middle of the woods.
Oh yeah,
in New England, you'll just find them. I've found a couple of them. I've found like, shit like that, and it's like, okay, so something was here a long, long fucking time ago.
Well, you run into that a lot too. Like I took Nick and Andy on a ride to just show them Shaker Village.
Oh, did you?
Yeah, just so they could get a visual of it. And I'm like, okay, so did you saw all the stone walls there, right? Yeah. I mean, those have been dressed up over the years.
They're used
because we have some amazing stone wall builders that just live in this town. But I'm thinking, that's a society that's only been around since the 1700s, and you should see all the stone walls there. And I'm just a firm believer that these stone walls have been here a lot longer than people are even remotely guessing. And again, where did you get all those rocks? Because those rocks, even though there are some big rocks, but most of them are probably about a foot in circumference, like roughly. Some are big, some are smaller. It's like, okay, so there was no big, massive rock like pile somewhere that everybody just took rocks off of and decided they were going to make walls with. Right?
That's the weird part. They all look very similar, from Massachusetts to New Hampshire to Vermont.
Yeah. Now there was a glacier that ran down through here.
That might have been it.
And the USGS, a friend of mine worked for them, and he told me one day we were talking, and this was quite a few years ago, and he said, yeah, a glacier went right down through here. That's why you have so much gravel.
Could be.
But here's what's weird. The rock that's in these gravel pits is not all granite. It's some other weird rock that they bust down into aggregate, and they actually make sand out of it. Like
Is
they
it
rock
no granite or some granite plus this aggregate?
Well, I've seen a lot of these rocks that come up what we call river wash.
Yeah.
And I mean, yeah, there might be some granite in there, but a lot of it doesn't look like granite. And that's just puzzling to me.
Well, here's the thing. I mean, what are they trying to accomplish by saying that a glacier came through here? Like, when the fuck did a glacier come through here for you to pick up rocks out of it? Like, are you saying that it just sat there for thousands and thousands and thousands of years? Or are you saying that a glacier came through and people picked up rocks and fucking... Like, a glacier came through there way before the academic record says that people were here. So I'm not sure what that statement's even trying to defend.
And if a glacier were to come through, wouldn't there have to be water everywhere?
The river across the street, they're saying that's
a glacier.
That's the path of the glacier.
Well, you know,
said that's what's left of it. Yeah.
I experienced a flood just a couple of months ago, and that was the second time I kind of did. But like, this one was weird because it was like town wide. It was just my town and 2 towns. That was it. But then I heard stuff about New York that same weekend and a couple other areas in the country. I'm like, this is the Great Flood. It's not like this one massive tsunami that everyone has nightmares about. It's just like slow,
incremental.
Sure. Yeah, man.
Didn't your studio kind of get fucked?
So the first time it did get fucked and I lost equipment, but this time we kind of prepared for it. We knew where it was headed, so I got all my shit out of there, but I lost the actual space, so now I'm in my fucking dining room.
Nick, what were you going to say?
You know, going by, like, I was even thinking about this earlier in the beginning of the podcast when you talk about generational trauma and, like, even going back to like, the floods and stuff.
Mm-hmm. That's what I was talking
being the
about.
Floods. And I've just, like, wondered, like, even some things that we would think of that would be, like, signs of destruction or, like, the world coming to an end, going by, like, you know, biblical disasters or other disasters and other things. With the technology that we have, and even with, like, the sewer systems and all that shit that we have, like, if we were to experience that now, would it even look like the end of the world?
Yeah,
I mean, we even have like weather manipulation. I mean, like we have patents on that. That's not like a conspiracy. I mean, it's obvious there's weather manipulation possible too.
That's a really good point.
So, like, would we even would the Great Flood was to happen again? Would it be the way it's written in the Bible with the way the world is now?
Well, yeah, it's like saying like how many YouTube videos or Instagram videos have you seen that would scare the fuck out of an entire nation? Now,
right.
Just from like some anomaly that exists in nature or something like that.
I mean, that's what they do with COVID, right?
Yeah, even manufactured shit like
the
that,
people dropping dead in the streets of China.
Oh, sorry.
The people dropping dead in the streets of China videos that were coming over to the U.S. and scaring the shit out of people. So, I mean, it wouldn't be hard to do.
Whether it's manufactured or just like a natural thing that they skew the actual meaning of, you know?
Yeah.
Yeah, but I know what Nick is getting at. He's getting at because of all the infrastructure that's been built for water runoff.
Yeah.
The water probably wouldn't pool up like it would have, like if you were thinking like in biblical times or a biblical flood, right?
Right.
Because it's got all these drainways.
I mean, it still might screw stuff up, but it has places to go.
It would be dismantling, but it wouldn't be apocalyptic in the same sense that we know about or think about it in our mythologies and our nightmares.
Yeah. Yeah, you know, it's just really interesting. Again, I did want to chat about the stone walls for sure. When you were on with Mark recently, Andy, you guys talked a little bit about stone walls, I want to say, or did I hear that somewhere else?
No, we definitely did. Yeah.
Yeah. So I'm like, oh my God, wait till he comes up this weekend. He's going to see stone walls, and I know you're probably used to it, but I don't know if you're used to seeing the amount of stone walls we have, like, just on this property. It's crazy.
New Hampshire's always more engulfing with the stone walls than Massachusetts. Well, I mean, it depends, because Massachusetts just has less trails, less wilderness attractions than New Hampshire.
Well, true.
New Hampshire's what, the most forested state in the United States?
It's the most.
Is it really?
It's one of the whitest, and also it is the #1 state for consumption of alcohol per person.
Which
So
is
it's an
weird,
average.
too, because, man, when I go to the mountains, like, yeah, getting drunk's pretty fun, but, like, man, you don't need anything.
Dude,
you
it's
just go up there.
it's an average of 60 gallons of alcohol per year per
That's
person.
pretty impressive.
That's the average, though.
Yeah, but that's only a gallon a week. That doesn't sound like a lot.
A gallon of booze a week, but that's the average. So, some are more, some are less.
Oh, true.
There's a lot of gas stations.
Yeah, it's like, I got to drive 2 hours. Might as well.
Yeah,
pick
well,
up
that's
a
the one
little-
thing. That's the one thing with New Hampshire that sets us apart from Massachusetts is that you could just roll into any gas station and get a 12-pack of beer. It's not a big
you
deal.
can't do that in Mass.
It's, oddly enough, it's slowly creeping in. I don't know what that means or what it matters, but yeah, it's slowly changing in Massachusetts. And Massachusetts is always considered very, very liberal. So I don't know if is that like a more conservative way to go? Like, is that creepy?
I don't know.
Like, I don't know what's happening.
I do
really.
know that Massachusetts and New Hampshire have beef, though.
It's weird.
It's
right?
long standing. I don't think it's weird.
I mean, I have beef with the situation that I live in Massachusetts and would rather live in New Hampshire.
I mean, I kind of hate Massachusetts and all people from Mass. I'm not gonna lie,
Buckley,
but
how do I change your mind?
But I do make exceptions for people that are wicked fucking cool.
Well, wicked being the
Wicked.
word.
Wicked, yeah.
All right,
Right.
So Nick, I had some questions for you because
Yes.
recently, well, not recently, last 6 months ago, we've been doing a lot of shows together, and you've been having me on to co-host. I really enjoy those shows too, and you're funny because, depending on what you're doing before the podcast starts, and then you get into the podcast, I'm like, Nick's.
I was telling Andy
he's kind of getting snoozy. I'm gonna jump in, but he goes. That's why I like having Ron on because he always asks questions I don't think to ask. But I've got some questions for you. Like, so this ghost investigation thing, I know this is something when you talk a lot about the occult and the things that you talk about, and a lot of our listeners are familiar with you. And so when did you decide that you wanted to kind of dabble in the ghost hunting thing? And I know this isn't new, just because we've talked a lot over the last since like COVID started, and so really, what got you into it, and what made you kind of, and not that you're getting away from the other stuff, I'm not saying that, but I was a little surprised when you said, I'm going to start getting into the ghost hunting stuff. I'm going to get all the equipment, and then you're like, hey, I want to come up, and I'm like, oh well, let's do it. And that's why we're here.
I was actually surprised too, and I'm really excited to hear this.
Yeah.
I do believe that you can. I do think it's possible to show kind of like that magic exists through the paranormal.
Yeah. Okay. Cool.
Magic.
Yeah, I mean, even when it, at some point I might try it myself, but like I even think, one of the reasons that even got me to even think about it, prior to even having like magical experiences myself, and I hate that I'm even giving this guy credit for it, but unfortunately Zach Baggins on Ghost Adventures, but they didn't really put much emphasis on it, and I was like, of course not, because in my opinion that was actually pretty intense. There was a point where they were actually talking to somebody and they had the thermal cam on, and they had showed that it looked like stuff started to rise out of him, and I was like, to me that was kind of compelling. And then like after I actually had magical experiences myself, which every time that I've had them, they've always come with some sort of physical feeling that feels like I'm actually literally slipping out of my body.
Oh, okay.
So then I was like, well, and that's just through meditation. That's not even like, casting circles and stuff. So like I do think like even if I was to eventually have the balls to do it, I could probably do that possibly with the thermal cam on me while I'm meditating. But I do think, electronic, EMF, electromagnetic fields and stuff like that, I do think magic goes back to a lot of magnetism and electric manipulation. The magnet bending the electric kind of bending it to its own will, in a sense, and changing shit, and then that causes manipulation. So I just think like between the EMF readers, the thermal cams, And even I think the orgone, the radiation meter that I have, if that goes off, that's showing that there's orgone possibly manipulation, which is some people are now, scientists are starting to say they kind of think that's like the essence of creation, orgone. So like I even think that if that was to ever spike on the radiation meter, that to me that's like kind of a form of magic. I mean, how this equipment is working, I think, is magic. We don't see it, but there's waves and shit going through.
Sure, yeah.
You know, so I think these detectors will, you know, that's why if I was to put on the EMF right now, it would light up because of this equipment too.
Right. Yeah.
You know, so I think it just shows like those. I think those few things right there. But I mean, I have plenty of other toys too to use and try out. But I just think those three or few things right there, I think I could show like magic. It's possible.
Yeah. You know, that was interesting that you said that when they had the camera on him and you could see like something coming out of him, like let's just say his essence or what Stephen King calls the steam, or what we might even consider a soul, right?
Yeah.
So and that's like super interesting because actually I was on with Chris at Forbidden Knowledge News the other day, just as a quick like buffet show we wanted to do. And we were talking about how I had a dream once that I had died. I died in my dream, but in my dream, I felt my soul leaving my body. And it was the most weirdest experience. Obviously, I'm still here. At least I think I am, because that's another thing about ghosts. That the theory that I have is people will say, well, why do you think there's ghosts? I said, well, they're hanging around because I don't think they know that they're dead.
It's a common theme.
You know what I mean? So it's like, but when I had that dream and my soul left my body, it was like a really weird feeling type of thing, like not a bad feeling. You know what I mean? And a lot of people discuss this when they get into NDEs, near-death experiences, right? Yeah. Where they're like, oh my God, I have, after that, I have absolutely no fear of death, like whatsoever.
But a lot of people with NDEs will also describe the same exact type of visions that a magician would see in their mind's eye before they cross the abyss.
Yeah, you know what you used to talk about, or what you've brought up before that I thought was really interesting is the whole thing with the eyes and the optic nerve. Yeah, and do you think that has anything, because what we're seeing, like say for instance we see a ghost, right? Do you think that there's something special about a particular person that's able to see ghosts, or do you think that everybody can see ghosts, or is it only like a certain perceptive type of person?
I think, well, I mean, believing in it probably being a possibility is a huge help.
Yeah.
Sometimes, I mean, this is something that is interesting me with your property is like, I'm wondering if these walls are even almost like power grids. You know what I'm saying? Or is there going to be like something that would actually help with, you know, some sort of field that would help with paranormal activity?
Well, see, that was what I was...
the area, I think, can play a part.
And that's what I was trying to get to earlier when I was saying, I think that all of this exposed granite, along with its quartz content...
That's the first thing I thought of when you told me what it was.
The quartz.
I was like,
it has some type of energy field, and that actually could be what kills the batteries around here. Well, but I'm saying that this could be why there's such a high prevalence of paranormal activity in places like these old properties and these old farms and things like that, because it's just, not only is the property super old, and then, you know, people lived here a couple hundred years ago or even before that. And then some of the people that have died on this property, you know, you're talking a minimum of 100 to 125 years ago. And this is the kind of stuff that we're going to be going to look at as soon as we get done recording these segments here. But I think all that granite has something to do with it.
Well, I think
I really do.
The quartz, the whole quartz thing, brings me back to the scalar light thing. And you know, obviously, scalar light is energy of light. Essentially, it's light energy, which is different from electromagnetic fields, which is a lot of times what the paranormal is assumed to interact with, right? So, and then we look at this, but they're I guess they're one and the same sort of, because not exactly, because, you know, scalar light can convert to electromagnetic energy and vice versa. Electromagnetic energy can convert to scalar light. So when we talk about, you know, this reminds me of the Shining thing that you were talking about with like the whole the ghosts showing up and essentially kind of being like time shifts or time kind of overlapping or bleeding through because, it's been said that like basically time is happening, like everything that's ever happened is happening right now, right? And whether you believe it's expanding like light expands or it's circular or cylinder or whatever, that it can bleed over. But I do think that scalar light, which was the stuff that Nikola Tesla was working on, could be a lot to do with people seeing ghosts. Because when we were talking about the optical nerve and all of that, because in my opinion, everything kind of is light to a certain extent. Like no matter what, you can say it's energy, but in reality, it's light. And what I mean by that is like when you're seeing anything that's reality, it's light that's coming into your eye, in your optical nerve, right? And then being somehow transmitted out into the physical reality.
Yeah, it
so
flips by your lens, yeah.
Right. So I just think that like the whole light energy, which is also the scalar light, it has been known through, like when we had that guest on, he said through like Buddhist cultures and like all these different cultures and meditation and whatnot is like kind of like the spirit energy. It would make sense, especially because it's light that's coming through either through in a field of time that's bleeding over or through your actual physical output through your eyes, the optical nerve. That's what I think. I know there's a big push on like the electromagnetic field stuff, which, sure, that could be it. I have no idea. But I think this whole scalar light thing is like kind of a whole side of things that when we talk about the paranormal and in the ghost stuff, like people don't know about because I really don't know much about it, or they just think it's something else because it's not talked about, in my opinion. Does that make sense? I don't know if I was I jumped around a little bit, but that's...
I even think with the eyes, I mean, I was realizing I never even really went back to that. I spent like 3 episodes talking about the eyes. Our eyes even project out like almost up to 6 feet. So it's like you'd almost have to question, like, are you seeing it only because you projected it?
Social distancing, 6 feet.
But your eyes do project out energy outside of your body.
Right.
I mean, that's even a thing that you'll probably would notice. I mean, I noticed it with my cat, and then I did it to myself. I mean, I even thought that was a little weird. With the thermal cam, if you put it up to your face, your eyes were like completely different color than the rest of your body. And like, even was my cat. My cat looked pretty much like, one color, and then like her eyes were just like almost yellow or almost like white.
Yeah.
And it's like you can see just from right there, there's some sort of energy that's being emitted.
Well, I just think there's such a big push on the electromagnetic field stuff.
Super
Do you know what I mean?
Well, maybe the electromagnetism is like something useful.
Right, but
I think it might be like a side effect of something going on.
But there's the whole Nikola Tesla energy, right? That just like no one really knows about, or it's never really talked about. Everything is put on electricity, electric energy, frequencies, and all that, especially when it comes to the paranormal. It's all about electromagnetic fields.
Well, they also tie Tesla to that usually and just assume it's all electromagnetism with him.
Right, but like the whole point, Tesla's whole thing, was like the scalar light. That, like really what it is. So it's like when we come to ghosts, I feel like maybe it's part of the conspiracy or some sort of hidden, trying to cover shit up or mislead people, but it's all pinpointed towards electromagnetic fields when there's this whole other light energy that like...
Maybe that's why they're allowing so much information about interesting electromagnetism experiments to just be everywhere all of a sudden, and people having startups everywhere. It's like, well, good, they'll just focus on that.
One thing I thought was weird is that, like, from playing around with this machine, the EMF thing, I mean, it also does electric field and like radio frequencies and stuff like that. And I don't understand, like, you never really hear anybody ever talk about the electric field. And like, to me, that is important because like that would show that there's energy there. Like I was putting my EMF thing, reading the electric field and like putting it up to the phone. And like the EMF would go up a little bit, but the electric field fucking skyrocketed. And then I did it to the headphones, the Bluetooth ones, and like the electric fields fucking skyrocketed, but the EMF didn't. But that's like showing you that there's like fucking energy right there.
Absolutely.
And I'm like, how come you like, I mean, unless I'm completely wrong and I'm a newbie, how come I've never heard of anybody ever really talking about that when it comes to paranormal? It's always EMF. Well, what about the electric field too? To me, that's showing me that there's energy to manipulate.
Yeah, And isn't it most of the time like Buckley's brother Kellen? You know, he does Lone Star Paranormal, and he's been on the show a few times, and he's getting kind of he's been doing some really kind of cool stuff lately too, and he came up with a bunch of different equipment. Nick, what did you bring up? Let's go over the equipment that you brought with you to do this investigation tonight a little bit, and kind of what component does and what you hope to find by using these different components, and is one component better than the other? Because a lot of people listening, they probably watched a million ghost shows and everything, and you see the people, they got these handheld devices, but they don't really explain what these devices are. So would you mind doing that?
Not at all. I mean, I'll cover the cameras real quick because they're really not doing much except for recording, but I have a Panasonic HC X2 or something like that. That was the big one that looks like almost like a news camera.
Yeah.
I have a shotgun mic on that. Then I have a Panasonic night vision camera that's half the size, but it films just as good, and it has a built-in light on it already. I had to get a light for the other camera that will use that too, so we could see what we're doing. And I have the green light, everything, so it looks like paranormal shows.
Yeah,
you always have to have that green light. And then I did bring the thermal cam that I would probably, considering how much it holds and how long it runs, we might just run it the whole night anyway.
Is it a FLIR? Is it FLIR?
No,
but I mean, is that different technology than the FLIR, or is it something similar?
I don't even know.
I can imagine it's probably based on FLIR no matter what.
Yeah, because the FLIR is shows the heat signature.
Right.
Yeah, and they will do this during. I've never really seen it used in ghost hunting, but for cryptid hunting, you see them using it a lot. Yeah,
I do know on mine, on the back of it, it has a thermal cam and a regular cam, and I was able to go in there and choose fusion. So then it'll actually give you the outline of the objects that you're actually looking at, so you can kind of get an idea of what the actual
what it is. Yeah. Yes.
Yeah. So it has that on there. So I have that thermal cam. I figured if maybe any of the meters were going off with anything, maybe turn that on, or like I said, maybe we can run it almost the whole time. Anyway. We have that, and I have an EMF reader, again, like we were talking about, EMF. It does also show, I do want to pay attention to the electric field, like I was saying earlier, because I do think, especially by those rocks, I'd be interested to see if it changes. If it doesn't, it may not, but I would like to pay attention to the electric field as well, besides the EMF. A spirit box, I'll be honest with you, some things I bought just because that's what ghost hunters are supposed to have.
Well, yeah, I want to try it out, right? I mean, you got to try it out.
So I got the spirit box because I'm a little interested on that. It's just I'm a little iffy with it too. Same thing with the SLS camera.
It sounds like it has a lot to do with intuition.
The SLS camera was just like some midgets humping Zach's leg in Ghost Adventures or something.
All right, explain what an SLS camera is.
That is oh God, it's hard to explain. You'd have to watch pretty much Ghost Adventures. They use it all the time. If I'm correct, it's it will start to show if it thinks that there's
spirit,
something there, and it starts to almost make stick figures out of it.
Oh yeah.
And there's always people popping up on Zach's shoulder. Or
it'll show up on a camera.
Yeah.
It's like a stick figure.
Oh, I got you. I've seen that before. Yeah.
The spirit box. Before I got away from that. The spirit box will also go through neither AM or FM. I'll probably choose AM because it'd be less interference. But it'll just cycle through stations over and over and over again. And if you want to ask questions and maybe see if you start getting answers through it, I don't know. I figured give it a try.
Just real quick about the spirit box, because my introduction to spirit box was actually a topic that you and I talked about, Nick, on my show with Lux back in the day, which was Hellier.
Yes.
How a show on a very popular network with actors pretending to be nobody podcaster types created this whole series and kind of popularized this spirit box idea, because I had never heard spirit box. I'm sure it existed. I'm not saying it didn't exist, but before then, it wasn't a big popular thing that ghost hunter. I wasn't seeing it on ghost hunting shows.
I entertain it, but it's more for the ghost hunting novelty.
I'm not saying it's wrong. I'm saying I think it was interesting for instance, a show like Hellier that was on big time TV and everybody. suddenly it was almost like an initiation. I think you and I talked about this, Ron.
Yeah.
how
And even with the
Hellier
God
felt
mask.
like an initiation for anybody watching almost. But like beyond that, like the spirit box itself, what they don't really highlight at all in the show is it's random. And from a skeptic or a cynical point of view, that's the end of the story.
That's what gets
But
me. But I'm like,
for anyone that goes beyond skepticism and cynicism, randomness and finding nothing in it is actually the fucking beginning, and it's always like, well, yeah, you have to kind of look for it. You have to put yourself 50% into it. Like you said at the very beginning, it helps to believe in it. A lot of people in secular society typically just believe that is a cop-out. That if you, conveniently you believe something, so you therefore experience it. From a logical, very, mathematical, cold, calculated point of view, it just sounds silly. But quite the opposite is true, because it's like the more you believe in it, the more you're willing to accept it, the more you're open to it. It's a whole thing, but it's like that's the divide right there, because like the modern academic world will never accept those premises.
But I feel like maybe it would be more accepted if like someone didn't believe in it and then they found out.
Absolutely.
I mean, if
Because,
they gave me
best
like a
horror
sentence, I would be like, all right.
Well, because like
Those
look
are the
at
best
like
horror movies about the paranormal, when it's like the skeptics taking videos and like suddenly it happens.
I feel like the like documentaries or like any sort of thesis like based anything. Essentially, it's like the most interesting ones to me are like if they go in with some sort of thesis and then thinking it's going to be one thing and then it becomes something completely different.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? Or they find something completely different out.
Well, because it feels so real, right? Because like that's the ethos of what an urban legend is. Right?
Yeah.
The urban legend becomes something ridiculous, but it came from a grain of truth.
Yeah.
But
there's also this whole side of the paranormal, especially along with cryptids as well. It's like the whole camera aspect. It's kind of a double-edged sword, because it's like to kind of capture a lot of paranormal shit, you need cameras. But you need cameras. Well, what can you do with cameras? You can fake a lot of fucking shit. Do you know what I mean? You can do different sort of things. You can do a bunch of tricks. So it's like, even if somebody gets them like really convincing material, or you see all these videos floating around on the TikToks and the Instagrams or whatever of like shadow figures or like things moving or like a chair moving, whatever it is, and it's like, well, that's fake. It's a camera. You could have just done X, Y, or Z to make that happen. So it's kind of fucked, because the only other really side of the paranormal or believing in the paranormal in my experience is like actually experiencing it for yourself.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean?
Absolutely. I
And
agree
that's
100%.
like one of the only reasons I really believe in it, is because I've had certain things that I've experienced. But like,
God, yeah.
if I fucking was just to watch videos and stuff, I'd be like, okay, that's creepy. But also, like, look at Hollywood.
Right.
Look at all the shit they can do in Hollywood. So it's like, who's to say some lower level TikToker, paranormal investigator, Instagrammer, YouTuber, whomever isn't just, pulling some strings on some chairs, moving them across the floor.
Well, also, it doesn't even, I mean, this is a tangent, but like, yeah, just to go off on that, like, all they have to do is give us one little push, And at that point, eventually it becomes so profitable, right? So, like, a lot of people just monetize themselves based on these things and get super popular talking about these things. Not that they fully endorse some sort of controlled opposition, position, but it's just like it comes natural to them because they're using the same lingo. They're just taking their own personal experience and attaching it to everything they've heard.
Yeah.
And it's
it's like my brother. But like my brother, this is the other, I guess, another part of it is like knowing someone. Like I want to say 99.99999%, like he wouldn't fake anything that he catches. No. I would think, obviously there's always a probability chance that, anything could fucking happen. But it's like also, I guess if you know someone, that's also a side of it. You could be like, okay, I know this person. They wouldn't fake something like this. That too. What were you going to say, Ron? Sorry.
Well, I guess that's the thing with me and watching when I, when all these ghost shows started getting super popular, of course it's interesting, right? If you're into like weird stuff, you want to tune in and check out a couple episodes, and then, for a few months or whatever, yeah, this is really cool. And then you started seeing the higher prevalence of these shows, like on every single different network. It didn't matter if it was Travel Channel, TLC, A&E, Discovery. And now you have the Discovery Plus app, which has all of them shows on one app, and you're like, oh my God. So now you are inundated with, okay, what am I going to choose? Now, I really like Jack Osborne stuff, right? And actually a show that
He's covering everything.
Well, the Jack Osborne, he was on this one show with a couple of guys. They actually had Kellen on the show.
Oh, that's awesome.
Yeah, just for a brief segment, but they had him now. Now, I could tell you right now, knowing Kellen like I do or whatever, he's not faking nothing.
No,
I'll tell you that right now.
No.
He's not faking anything. However, this gets back to the kind of territory that you're watching all of these shows and you're watching the same MO. You're watching they're doing this and they're doing that and it's all the same. It's just different people doing the same shit. And it doesn't take away from it. And I'm not saying it's fake. I'm just saying there's an awful lot of information coming from an awful lot of different directions from a lot of different people. And that's why I'm really excited for tonight, because I know everybody on this panel, and we're going to go onto a piece of property that I know for a fact is haunted.
That's what I loved about it.
Yeah. And the other thing that I find too is I think if we get lucky and we're able to discover anything with all of this equipment that you have, Nick, I think what we experience in the graveyard is going to be different than what we experience in the barn.
We got to find a Sasquatch.
I think it's going to be several different types of things that we pick up on.
That'd be great.
So can I ask you a question? No, I got here a little bit late, so I didn't get to go up to the graveyard yet. But I got a text while I was driving from Nick, like, dude, you gotta see this fucking graveyard. So how isolated is this graveyard?
It's pretty isolated.
Yeah,
It's just bigger than I expected, and again, like the walls around it. And I was
It's
just-
at the-
Hell yeah.
yeah.
I'm just saying, like, we got a lot of cars around. We got the road right here. Is the graveyard kind
It's
of
up at the top of the hill.
It's up
That's
at
good,
it's
okay.
at the back of the property, yeah. And on the other side of the property line, there isn't anything.
Because I'll just make
Woods.
it known, like,
It's woods.
I'm personally looking for Sasquatch while y'all are looking for ghosts. But
Yeah,
I'm open.
no,
I'm completely
Andy and I
open.
will be Team Sasquatch. You guys can be Team
Oh,
Ghost.
this is cool. This
We'll
is cool.
break
I
up.
like
We'll
this.
break up.
Now
Well,
we
let
need
me-
those fucking batteries for the walkie-talkies.
Well, let me tell you something what's weird about this cemetery. And Nick and I kind of explained it to him, right? It's a good-sized cubicle, right? It's a good-sized graveyard. Now, there's only stones up on the top end, which I find kind of strange. But what's even more stranger is there's only one real gravestone in there.
What?
And the other markers are actually field stone tipped up on its edge, and they have engravings in them. And I had mentioned to Nick too that, it must be the light, because I've never been able to read them stones as good as I can read them right now.
Those are like old. The whole field
Oh yeah,
stones.
they're
Those
just
are
like
old.
granite stones, flat granite stones.
Yeah.
That somebody chiseled information in. In the gravestone, and here's another thing, this might even be its own show at some point. Who is Ruth Chase?
That's the name on the gravestone?
Because Ruth
Yeah,
Chase
the
is
one that's legible, the best. Yeah.
and it's actually a marble gravestone, which isn't all that.
It's like flat.
It isn't all that unusual in New England to have a marble gravestone.
You're rich.
Yeah,
but
pretty
this
rich,
but
yeah.
this one is marble. Now, in all the research that I've ever done when I was running the Historical Society here in town, I was never able to come up with any information on who this Ruth Chase person was, because the family that owned all this property's name was Hill, Hill, not Chase. And why is she the only one in that graveyard that has an actual stone? And who was she?
Ron, are you sure you're not part of the Freemasons? You're running the Historical Society. You got marble gravestones up in the top of your property.
You got a lot of empty cars on this property.
Yeah, a
Ron.
lot
Where are
of
the bodies
empty
that were
cars.
driving the cars?
Ron.
That gravestone for Ruth Chase is actually laid flat and it's broken. Now, it's been like that since I discovered that cemetery.
When did you discover it?
When I was a very little kid, probably
No
like
shit.
13 years
Did a
old.
spirit like seduce you out there?
No, so let me tell you the story. So when my folks bought this property, before the garage was built here, and before there was any cars out back, they were just hills that they used to hay. They used to cut the hay. And it was kind of grown up around the walls, right? So I didn't even know that cemetery. Nobody even told us there was a cemetery here. Now, we have 27 documented cemeteries in this town. This is what they call an undocumented family cemetery, right? Now, when you go up in there, Ruth Chase's stone was set at one time. Because you can see the base that's there, that's got the rectangular cutout, and then the marble or in granite, and in some cases in New England, slate. They used a lot of slate for gravestones, like really old gravestones, late 1600s up to mid-17, even in some cases late 1700s, they used slate. But this stone was set at one time. Something knocked that stone over, and when that stone went over, it broke in half. Now well, it could have been
Sasquatch ran.
It could have been something. It could have been something as simple as a tree branch knocked it over or whatever. I don't think that's likely. However, what's weird about it is that stone has always been flat,
but it's broken. That's weird.
Yeah, well, I mean, I think it broke when it fell.
What kind of trees are up there?
It's all maple trees.
Sasquatch trees.
All maple trees?
Yeah.
No oak trees?
If we have oak here, it's not many. We do have some oak here.
I'd be curious if there's oak trees near it.
So I got a couple,
there's oak trees.
I got a couple cool, weird graveyard things for you that I've come across. Because when I was a much skinnier, younger man, more light on my feet, I would trail run a lot through the Mink Hills. I grew up in Warner, which is a town that's kind of on this area called the Mink Hills, which I've talked about before. And then there's Kearsarge Mountain, which is like 1,100-foot mountain.
Yeah, Andy, you probably know that
little
one, don't
guy.
you?
Yeah,
it's a little, cool. It's a little guy, a little one, but it's fun, you know. And I used to trail run, and we'd go all over the place. So one time we just found a random stone in the middle of the trail, way out, because we'd go on talking 10-mile, 12-mile runs, like diesel shit. Can't do it anymore. Can't do it anymore, but. We found that we'd found a random stone that was just a marker for like a pilot's son. No, sorry. His son was a pilot whose plane crashed. Just way out in the middle of fuck all nowhere. Another time we found we were running up the side of, that was in the Mink Hills. We were running up the side of Kearsarge Mountain, and it was pouring, pissing rain out. Running up the trail. The trail actually turned into a river while we were running up the trail, and we were like running through this river, and we got out of there, and then we find on the side of Kearsarge Mountain, no trail around, like nothing. We're miles out in the woods, just a random graveyard, middle of fucking nowhere, like
with headstones.
Well, they weren't like the headstones you'd see today, more like field stones, like Ron was talking about, like just stones that were placed with like whatever, can't really read them type of shit. And then we also, now this is a place we kind of knew about, but I had never been there, but it's a place called Palmertown, which was this whole town that apparently used to exist out in the middle of fucking nowhere, and it was quarantined. Yeah, so everyone was like kind of, I don't know when, but old. It was quarantined because everyone had some sort of sickness, so they wouldn't let anyone in or out of it. And now all there is just a bunch of fucking foundations.
Holy shit!
Like old creepy shit. Like it's
It
weird.
is creepy. I've never heard of that.
You've never heard of Palmertown? Yeah,
No.
it's like a thing in our town. It's like Palmertown. Like not everyone knows about it, but we found it, and it was like kind of.
There's got to be some weird shit
sketchy
all over the mountains of New Hampshire and Maine.
Oh, I'm sure. Well, the thing I've always said about like obviously we've talked about the hauntings and shit of the White Mountains and all of that stuff.
Dude, people that work at Mount Washington Observatory
Right.
talk about hauntings and stuff. I've
There's-
talked to them in person about it, and they're like,
loads of ghost stories. But like the thing too is like I've always
Like
talked
the ghost
about,
of Tip Top House?
yeah,
Yeah,
exactly.
yeah.
Yeah, or the Lake of the Clouds.
yeah. But I've always said, like, too, with, like, the whole cryptid Sasquatch stuff, because we had that guy on, Evan, who has recounted or has retold interviews he's done with people around New Hampshire. One of them was a park ranger or fishing game?
Conservation officer.
Conservation officer who swears that he saw a Sasquatch. And my thing is always with, like, that, it's like, okay, like, obviously there's that whole notion that, like, national parks and stuff through Roosevelt were like set up for kind of like this, Sasquatch preservatory areas. Like they set them up just so they could maintain the land for Sasquatches, right? So my whole thing is like lots of times when you're hiking in the White Mountains, you're on a trail, right? You never really go off trail unless you got to take a shit or you're a dumbass, you get lost. And then
you don't want to go off trail.
You don't want to go off trail, but like. So even if you do go way out on a fucking mountain, right, out in the middle of whatever, in the middle of nowhere, you're just on the trail, and there's so much land in between that is unaccounted for that you'd have no idea what the fuck goes on. There could be mountain lions in a little tunnel sleeping. There could be Sasquatches fucking raping chicks. Who knows? Do you know what I mean? But you don't know.
Well, that was my only possible encounter I ever had was in the White Mountains in Crawford Notch.
With a Sasquatch?
My buddy with a Sasquatch.
Yeah, that's actually a hotbed.
Well, possibly. I mean,
I just went 6 to midnight.
The whole time leading up to the actual encounter, we assumed it was probably like a black bear or something like that. But we definitely knew something was following us up the trail. It was late October, like right around this time, early November.
Yeah.
And, a lot of times black bears will follow hikers around up there.
Oh, sure.
Food and shit
because
like that.
We have food and everything. We just make bear bags and stuff like that. But this thing decided to take a loop trail. Like, I don't know, you guys are familiar with the White Mountain trails up there. There's a lot of, like, if you're old or you can't handle it, there's usually a loop trail.
Yeah, there's always loop trails.
This trail's steep. This other trail's not steep.
Right, and it meets up at one point.
Right.
Well, this fucking thing decides to cut us off and come in front of us.
Ooh.
Around the loop trail. We lost it for a while, and there it was again, and suddenly it was right in front of us. I literally, like, ran into my buddy, like, my face into his backpack. He's like, dude, it's right in front of us. And, like, 10, 15 minutes before that, he's like, something's following us. Have you noticed? I just wanted you to be aware if you didn't notice. I'm like, what?
Did you guys take any drugs?
No, nothing. I mean, we smoke weed all the time, but when was the last time you fucking hallucinated at, like, an encounter?
Makes you paranoid.
Yeah. What's interesting, Andy?
Silliness.
What's interesting about Crawford Notch is that Crawford Notch area is kind of a hotbed for that.
Yeah, didn't Evan have
UFO
some tales
too?
Yeah. Well,
didn't Evan have some?
That was Bear Notch.
Oh, fuck.
But Bear Notch isn't far from Crawford Notch.
No,
so,
it's very close.
Yeah, it's very close. So
About,
super
15,
interesting.
20 miles away.
All right, so Nick, when you brought up the spirit box, like that's the thing that really interests me. What we're going to find with that spirit box, it's just I think because when Kellen was here. He had a spirit box, I believe.
Yeah.
And that's what became active. Not only that, the REM pod became active.
Yeah, I had one of those too.
And when the REM pod became active, Buckley left the barn.
Yeah, I got a little freaked out.
Oh, yeah, Ron was telling us about that.
Yeah.
No, that wasn't a joke.
Goes
that
on.
was serious.
I believe
Pull me over there.
Yeah.
So this is something, I was in the barn. That was in the barn, right? So,
Yeah.
Well,
You were by yourself, right?
No, me and my brother were separated. But we were both in the barn, but he was way at the other end and I was on one end. And so, like, I've had a lot of weird paranormal shit happen to me, and like I never am looking for it. 100%. I'm never the person besides with my brother here, and then I guess tonight with you guys. These are like the only times that I've gone looking. Anytime anything else has ever happened to me, I'm like never. Wanting it to happen.
Yeah, you're not
It just
happens.
randomly happens.
Right.
Yeah.
So what I remember is like being like kind of walking in there, and my brother kind of got separated, and I was kind of standing there, and I was just kind of walking around in one spot, and I just remember getting like this feeling. It was like the hair was starting to stand up on my like hand, or like there was just some weird thing kind of like being draped over my hand.
Yeah, that is how you described it.
Right, and my brother was kind of
weird.
like after the fact, because after this started happening, I went in like that weird side room where there's a bunch of tools, which I didn't stay in for very long because I thought it was.
Yeah, he showed me that.
That's the sketchy room.
That was like as soon as I got in there, I went in there, but as soon as I was in there, I was like, I just want to leave like this area. But so after the fact, I was kind of telling it was like I felt like something was being draped over my skin. It's like, oh yeah, so like oftentimes when people are like encountering paranormal shit, it feels like you're kind of walking through like a spider web almost. Do you know what I mean? And I was like, oh, that makes sense because that's kind of how I felt. But I will say, like, yeah, I don't know.
That's creepy.
No, he
weird
legit got freaked
shit.
out. He left the barn.
Yeah, I went outside and I was like, good.
Yeah, and that was the room I was telling Nick that we definitely got to check this room out. Now, keep in mind, Nick is going to be having a lot of video for this once you put that all together, right? So you'll be able to go check it out. But let me describe.
I'll probably actually be ready right after this episode drops.
Nice.
Yeah. Well, if just to give people a visual, like this barn is huge.
Yeah, it's a big guy.
This barn is big, and it's 3 stories. And it's probably the biggest barn that's still erect in this whole county. Like that's that size. I mean, it is a big barn. So when we say we got separated and you're down one end and somebody's down the other end, like that's a distance.
Yeah, it's not 30 feet.
No. That barn is 100+ feet long.
Yeah.
For sure. So I'm really looking forward to that. So Nick, explain the REM pod and what that does.
Basically, in my opinion, it's like the same thing, I guess, with like almost like an EMF meter, but it's like it's letting you know that like something or something's getting close to it as well.
It's really cool when they go off because it went off up there. Because they all start with these lights start flashing and stuff like that.
You can change like I think I have it just like set on like average, but you can even I think change the sensitivity to it. But if you get close to it, you'll definitely set it off yourself too.
Okay, what I wanted to ask you, because this is something that we had picked up on before when we did some video in the barn, and actually in this garage as well. We got orbs. And of course, and they were good ones too, right, Buckley? So a lot of people, when they see something that we describe as an orb in a video, they'll say, oh, well, that's just dust. These clearly were not dust. These were orbs that went on strange trajectories. So it would go up, cut down, go up, and then just kind of go off.
Right.
Where dust
usually like...
Dust doesn't do
the
that.
Still frame would show that movement?
Actually, Kellen had picked up on it in the replay when he ran it in slow motion.
Right, so he'll obviously he goes through and reviews all the footage like pretty, I guess, intently. But like, yeah, so like Ron was saying, dust kind of like just kind of floats and hangs and kind of whatever. But these were like clearly had intent moving and like were like zipped in and out.
So what are your thoughts on what the orbs could possibly be?
I don't know. Maybe energy or something.
Well, I mean, it must be energetic, right?
Orbs interest me, but I couldn't tell you.
What about like a fairy?
Well, my point is,
like Tinkerbell.
is I would be surprised.
Anyone?
Well, I would be surprised.
Sometimes I wonder if it's like thoughts leaving people's minds.
Well, I would be surprised if we don't get some orb footage tonight. I would be very surprised if we do not.
So I have a couple things.
Okay.
And one's very cynical.
Yeah, let's hear cynical.
Throw stuff at me. It's fine. I'm just covering this aspect of it. Yeah, there we go. Now it's complete. The things that move, quote unquote, intentionally, have we ruled out insects?
Like a fucking...
if we're just defining the ones that move nicely as dust... They're about the same. I'm just saying,
like a June bug or a lightning bug, or
tiny little.
Legit question.
As light objects on film because they're so small that any light is going to project them as light rather than a solid object.
No, that's a legit question, Andy. And let me tell you,
I'm not saying that describes.
Are you an orb denier?
No,
Andy?
not at all.
Is that what you're saying right now? You're an orb denier.
No, I have other things to say about orbs.
This came up in a previous. This came up in a previous conversation. If we were doing this investigation when it was 70, 80, 90 degrees out at night,
that's true.
and you have any type of light, you're going to have moths everywhere, right?
And tiny little fucking mayflies and shit
The
like
time of year that Kellen did his investigation was probably not this far into November.
Cool.
But it was a cold night, wasn't it, Buckley?
It was fall, I believe. Because
it was in the fall, and it was also very bright out. So there was, I don't know if it was a full moon, but it was bright outside. And we actually took some pictures of that.
Cool. I definitely just wanted to cover that.
Yeah, no, 100% legit. So my thought on that was, when the temperatures get down, like we dropped in temperature 30-something degrees from last night already. And by the time we go up to do this investigation, it's probably going to be high 20s, early 30s,
Yeah,
right?
it's about 28 degrees tonight.
Yeah, so the probability of there being
33
insects flying around in this temperature, this time of year, is probably going to be, it's going to be really slim.
Good answer.
So just because that came up.
Good.
That came up before.
Yeah, Andy.
I'm
to shut down our orbs.
Not even close, man.
God, this is why people from Mass, you know?
Dude, I've seen them too, man. I've definitely seen them too up here in New Hampshire.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm not saying I know what the orbs are. I don't. That's why I asked.
Well,
but it's some form of energy.
What interests me about the orbs is how, for some reason, they show up around Sasquatch sightings quite often, which is really weird because I don't see really any connection to Sasquatch encounters with the lights almost whatsoever. Like I've listened
we're
to
talking
so
about
many.
different types of orbs too, Andy.
What do you mean?
Like the orbs? Okay, so the orbs that I'm talking about during a ghost investigation, very small. Like say the size, believe it or not, something as small as the size of a dime, if not smaller.
No, I know what you're talking about.
Like in camera. Now,
but wouldn't it be kind of weird to just strictly say that is only what you like? I mean, to separate the two, like, okay, one is big and one is small, but they're both being seen within circumstances that are unexplainable.
Like there are normal sized people and there are midgets.
Well, I just
do you know what I mean?
That is an inappropriate term.
I just wanted to
all
make
the dwarves that weren't going to be in the new fucking Snow White movie are very offended.
Yes,
the guy from Game of Thrones is pissed.
Oh, Jesus Christ!
That
I
one,
wanted to make the distinction because if you remember, Andy, a long time ago, we did a show, and I think I did a show with Nick, and we probably went over the same story. When I was up four-wheeling in the woods of Maine,
right,
and I saw lights coming,
those were similar to mine. Yeah,
those. Like, I'm calling those lights. I'm not calling those orbs because I'm telling you right now, those look like headlights coming at me.
Like UFO
and
shit?
they weren't.
Mine looked like a headlight, like a parking lot light. And then we pulled into the...
Maybe you tell me.
And we're like, oh, shit, there's no lights in this parking lot.
And that happened to me
like that too.
Twice on the same weekend, right? Flipped me out.
Right.
So when you hear about the stories of the orbs associated with Sasquatch sightings, I think people are seeing orbs in the sky, not ground level, not in a building or whatever. So that's kind of the distinction.
When you say
I want to make.
difference.
Because when they see orbs, they see an orb of light that could be white, could be orange, could be whatever, and then there just happens to be a Sasquatch encounter like right after that, right? When I'm talking about the orbs that we saw in the barn and in the shop here, very, very small. Like even saying they're the size of a dime, like a dime might even be too big.
Like the size of an insect.
Well, there you go. Yeah, right.
No, but I get what you mean because I think I've told you about this when I was camping at Hermit Island. We had a campsite over the cliffs, and all my girl, her mom, and my daughter were all sitting around a fire overlooking a cliff over the ocean. And we see this, it was like a orb, but it started out very small and it illuminated into this big ass ball.
Oh, you told me that
and
story.
It just stayed there. And then eventually it just reversed and illuminated down and then till it disappeared. And like what happened with you, I left the next morning, but they said it happened again the next night. Like similar to like you seeing the same orbs. on your trip. So there are like those orbs, because I've seen that shit and you've seen that shit and you've seen those shit where it's like in the sky, big orbs, but then there's those small ass ones that kind of float around.
Well, just like
I
you've
guess.
heard the stories, and I forget whereabouts in the United States it is, but I want to say it's central Atlantic coast, Virginia, Carolinas, or maybe even Georgia. The lights, like there's these sections of woods, and they're known to have lights in them. And people have actually filmed this. They have it on film. And then, of course, you get these academics that come in and they say, well, no, it was this. It was some type of
gas.
light refraction or whatever. Of course, so they're going to come up with any way to debunk that. Now, I get that people want to debunk it because they want us not to say, oh, whatever you guys are doing is a bunch of horseshit. But no, they want to debunk it because a lot of people just flat out don't believe in ghosts. And they flat out don't believe in anything paranormal, and they don't believe anything cryptid. They can't wrap their head around the fact that something might be going on that you don't know about and something that you cannot understand.
And your authorities told you not to worry about.
Right, right. So
being education.
So I think there's something to it. Again, I think the lights that I saw in the woods, I wouldn't describe them as orbs. Those are just bizarre. But orbs that you see up in the sky is something different, and I think the orbs that we see in the barn in our last investigation is something different. So it's going to be interesting to see what we come up with. I'm very excited about this. And so Nick, what is the game plan? What do you want to do first? How are we going to approach this?
From the rear.
All naked.
I thought about
lubed up.
Like all four of us going over to the cemetery at once.
I want to do the cemetery first. Yeah.
Should we put out some like good intentions while we're up there?
No, that.
Maybe think about it. Yeah.
I think good intentions will.
Yeah.
Well, no, good intentions will deflect anything. I think we want the
Are
bad.
we automatically thinking that everything that's going to contact us is evil?
Yes.
So it would be
That's what I go with.
Scientific mind and just kind of like. Neither.
I like it.
Yeah. Like having kind of like neither.
Trust the science.
Can I just add in one weird theory? Again, back to like the little tiny orbs.
Oh my god!
I know. I'm gonna stick on it.
Let's go.
I have another bottle cap. I might throw it at you,
dude. This will be worth it.
All right.
What if there's something to do with our own consciousness involved in this process?
I've thought that too.
Okay, explain.
Well, okay, that's what I'm about to do. So, what if it is dust particles, but something about our presence is affecting it? And our, what would you call it, like an auric field or something like that? Like we exert an energy beyond our bodies. And especially if we're in the state of thinking about it. And the whole idea of it being something else, some other intelligence, is actually a psyop to take us away from the power that we're already wielding.
Yeah, that's
I
interesting.
have actually thought that.
Now, granted, that's just my random weird theory about orbs.
I've said that,
but it plays along with a lot of other central theories of conspiracy theory.
So you think it's our own energy?
It's always our own.
Manipulated.
Always.
Well, isn't everything we see technically
Absolutely.
our own
and
energy?
That's always what's taken away from the story, isn't it? Because it's always about goblins and ghouls.
Right. And I feel like this is something I've said about the elites, and like I try to talk to people about
They're
this.
clearly reptilians from Draco.
Exactly. And I try to talk to people about this, and they're just like, well, no, you're crazy. Whatever. But when we talk about like the Matrix and like the propaganda stuff and like the energy sucking stuff and the energy manipulation, which happens all the fucking time, and like you see it with all the paradigm shifts, whether it's COVID or Ukraine or Israel, right? So you see like, and this was a big thing for me, was like the whole the dead kids propaganda, or sorry, I don't know if it's propaganda. It could be real.
The headless kids stories.
Or just like the videos that are going around, like dead children and stuff like that. It could 100% be real. I really have no idea. But like I was having this conversation with someone, and I was like, look, like I get it. It's sad because they were like, it's super sad. It's like had me upset all day. Like it's really affected my mood all day. And I'm like, yeah, I understand. But like, I think that's like part of the reason.
Right.
Like I think that's like kind of an angle that they're trying to play at, and they're like, well, what do you mean? So you think it's all fake? And I was like, I don't know if it's fake. It could be. It could not be. It could be propaganda. And they're like, well, there's something inside of me like guiding me, telling me that this is real and like this is sad and like people need to see that. And like, you know, I feel spiritually like I'm guided by something higher that is like letting me know that the authenticity of this, that it's real. And I was like, okay, yeah, I understand that. But like, you know, I kind of went into some of the elite control stuff with them and kind of just gave them a little point of my perspective and was like, so don't you think they know that you like think that you're guided by this light or this inner energy that's telling you and deciphering the world for you from what's right, good, bad, evil, fucked up, you know, all this stuff. So in my opinion, don't you think, or in your opinion, my opinion, whatever, you possibly think they know this, that you're guided by this light or this energy or whatever, and they're fucking with that intentionally because they know that that energy is something you're drawing from.
We can't be friends anymore.
And they're pulling it out of you intentionally. So they know, especially for women, dude, the shit with the kids, especially for women, it's like, that is such a soul sucker for women. I mean, I'm not saying, you know, men aren't affected by it because, like, I have a daughter, you have a daughter. I don't know if you have a daughter, but whatever. But, like, so men too, but women have way more of a bond with kids than guys really do or will know. More spiritual, more whatever it is. I don't know. They just do. It's a whole birthing thing.
You know how many women got politicized over the whole Save the Children and that Trump and Q shit?
Right, but like what I mean is like I feel like that's another aspect along with like the energy, the light that people could or could not be guided by that they're manipulating. It's like they're targeting they're targeting women with this shit because they know the kid shit is directly going to affect women. And
you need your mom.
You're right, and like so when they see a dead kid, they're like, oh, what if that's my kid? Do you know what I mean? And then it's like. So they know that, and they know that the energy is being manipulated. They're manipulating the direct energy, and I kind of forget where I was going with that. But
great points, though.
But I think what I was trying to get.
Well, like Andy said, we're projecting out energy, and this is why we're seeing. Yeah,
right. So then that's what So like basically, what I was trying to kind of get at was like, yeah, everything is kind of the energy light. Scalar light possibly that you're kind of decoding, and possibly people are guided by that, and the elites know that, and that's why you see the heavy manipulation propaganda all the time.
Yeah, it's almost like instead of looking at it as demons and angels, you can look at it more like energy that you're aware of versus energy you're not.
Right. And if they have fucking demons on their side and these paranormal spirits.
Personified energy, I guess you could say.
Yeah, sure. On the elite side also got like manipulating, doing all this shit. That's like another level.
That's where
you don't even fucking know about
and that's where like the egregores come in, right? Where if enough people believe in it, or if I think traditionally it's like a ritual where someone brings something into manifestation, but the overall idea is like if enough people believe in it, it comes real.
Yeah.
Now, I think in our alternative world, it's very easy to look at something like that concept and go, oh my God, it's Ghostbusters. They're going to bring in a fucking metaphysical creature into the real world. But what if it's just the fear itself that needs to be real? What if it's just the calamity of confusion and division that and I know it's like, you get to this point where you're mixing metaphors and physicality and materialism and stuff like that, but it really does come down to like how we feel and how we interpret things.
Right.
So,
but that's part of all the whole occultism, black magic.
Absolutely.
Like the word sorcery too, the imagery sorcery, the propaganda, all that shit.
Yeah.
Even mixed with the paranormal, whatever you want to say.
Man.
Dude, everything is everything.
Everything is everything, and that's the ultimate thing.
Okay, so Nick, you were gonna comment on that because I think it's an interesting concept that Andy brings up that like if we're projecting out types of energy and we're already in this mindset that we're out here looking for ghosts, so our mind is also going to go into that gear where anything that we see we could construe as a ghost.
Well, I wasn't saying it to say that we'll just make things up, though. I was saying it that what we interpret as paranormal doesn't have to be not paranormal just because it may be coming from whatever we would call perhaps source that we fucking are anyway. You know what I mean? It's just that we separate one to the other, especially this concept of other. Other is a very sacred alien term because of like, it's getting weird. But yeah, sorry, I didn't mean to.
Oh no, it's all good. It's
Get
all
weird,
good.
motherfucker. Nick.
Oh,
Yeah,
Nick, I thought you were going to say something.
No.
I didn't let Ron finish his question, so I apologize.
You were going to comment on
Nick,
that. And I was
Nick,
just,
are you high?
No, I thought Ron was still asking more of a question.
You look high.
No. I think I was going to say something before where when he did say that, my opinion, I do think there's already ghost shows that are doing that now.
Soul sucking or energy sucking?
Well, I think they're magicians and they're occultists and they're probably creating a little bit of paranormal activity around them.
I mean,
you're thinking that they are actually bringing the paranormal out by using a form of magic or something.
Might be
like through ritualistic kind of means or like energy harnessing, or do you mean more like the Hollywood manipulation stuff?
I think like when you fuck with magic and you cross the abyss, you're going to come back like a charged battery.
Especially with your ego.
So
can we quote him? Can someone write that quote?
Yeah, that was pretty fucking awesome.
So I think that you can help feed something if there's like a magnetic field that can help create. I think you can help feed it.
Power wants more power.
Okay, I got something I want to run by you real quick because your experience with the occult and things like that. Have you ever heard stories where people have bought, like say a young couple, they buy a house, right? And everything in their relationship is awesome, right? But they move into this house and now they're always at each other's throats. Bad things are going on. They can't get along with each other. Do you think that is something that maybe this particular property, like, because I have always said, like, I mean, things go okay here, but it always seems like right when things are going okay, something flips a switch and it starts going south. And it's not just here, it's actually at my home too, where you could be in a great mood and this and that and everybody's getting along. The minute you get into that house, you're in there for 5 minutes and it seems like this whole negative energy just overtakes you and just turns you into an asshole, basically. and I'm thinking, and because my father was super, super difficult person, right? And it was almost like when he was around here, he was a certain way, but if we were off somewheres, he was like a totally different person. And the same thing happens for me when I'm at my house, and I always tell my wife this, like we like to go to Maine, we vacation in Maine quite a bit. Or also Florida. And it's like when you get away from this town. Now, Anonymous Sean and I have this theory that we're living in a cursed town. Ooh. And we've actually done some shows about it and had some examples of things. And not only that, but like this end of town, right? And it's like when I go to Maine, it's like as soon as I cross that border, it's like a weight comes off my shoulders. Everything is easy, and I have the best time ever. But as soon as I get closer and closer and closer back to this town, it's almost I can feel like the overwhelming sense of negativity and dread. Now, do you where? No, I'm serious. But where does that fit in with, like, say, this kind of occultist paranormal thing that is the state of New Hampshire, or in this case, this particular town? Because I'm telling you, weird shit happens in this town.
Is it just like this town?
You've heard Sean talk about this.
Right, I know. But is it like just this town, or is it all of New Hampshire?
Well, with me, I think it's just a mental thing that because once I cross that border into Maine, I know that I'm out of New Hampshire, so now I can let my guard down, so to speak, right?
And that's the key.
Yeah.
Well, no, I'm wondering, is it like all of New Hampshire? You feel this way, or is it just Loudon?
Just this town.
Okay.
Yeah.
Interesting. So it's where you've been, and it's where you come from.
Yeah.
It's where your mind is.
Yeah, I mean, I wasn't born here.
Memories are.
I wasn't born here, but I've been here. I've been in this town since I was about 4 years old.
How about Sean?
Sean's been here since the get-go.
I mean, memories are ghosts in a way, right?
Exactly. And it's not to take away from
The paranormal.
well, yeah, and like the way we think about ghosts and the attributes we give them. But if you apply those same characteristics to bad memories, I'm not like,
or just
again,
memories.
It kind of sounds like I'm just being a cynic, but I'm not. Like, it's just the language we use, and we're just so used to experiencing normal human emotion as non-magical and non-paranormal. But it's like you have connections to this place. I'm not saying that you live in a shithole or you have bad memories here, but
I'm
you
sure
have some, right? I mean, and also like going home has a dual feeling to it often, you know. It's
like when I go by my childhood home or I go by my high school, which I don't do a lot, but when I do, I get really weird feelings when I go by either one. I don't know if it's people say, oh, it's nostalgia, but it's like
what is
it's
that?
not right. And nostalgia is usually just in my opinion, it's kind of like, oh, remembering like the past and like, oh, when you were young, blah blah blah. Which yes. But also, it's like you get this feeling of kind of like dread and like, ugh, like
thought about that
not a
before.
good feeling in my opinion, a bad feeling for some reason.
about all nostalgia or just
I don't know if it's nostalgia or if it's like the connections or ties that I have to those places. I'm not sure what it is, and I don't know what the difference is, or if there even is a difference. Maybe it's different for like you guys. You know what I mean?
Well, it could be psychosomatic.
I think
too,
what I'm getting at is it like, even though it kind of sounds like a cynical interpretation, like, oh, don't worry, it's not ghosts, it's just your emotions. It's kind of the same thing, and it can be both, and one can manifest the other. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I agree.
It's like where often people will look to outside sources for causes for paranormal activity. It's like, well, maybe looking more on the inside and not saying like, oh, you have so many unfinished businesses or nothing like that. Just normal human experiences and emotion cause so many echoes no matter what.
Well, it's like trauma too. Like why lots of people have trauma. It's kind of the same thing. If it's if it's a bad, something terrible that's happened to you, maybe you know about it, maybe you don't. It kind of has that same feeling and effect. You know, I think that's super interesting. Like maybe the ghosts are actually just inside of you, Ron.
Well, right, yeah. It's like a lot of people, they'll prey on negative emotions. Like, well, isn't that convenient?
Right, maybe
why
you're just
not look
full
at it
of-
the other way around? And you don't have to throw ghosts out, but like you can look at it from the opposite perspective.
Yeah.
I mean, because the opposite side of the coin is all like happy lights and happiness and manifestation.
Rainbows,
right?
butterflies.
Yeah, life definitely isn't like
rabbits.
portrayed on social media for sure. Nick, did you have something you wanted to add to that? Because you get that smile.
No.
You got that look about you.
No, I was actually just trying to get an idea of what I wanted to do after this. I was picturing the great.
All right. You guys ready to go look for some ghosts? You want to get going on that?
Yeah, this is pretty cool.
Yeah.
All right. Well, let's end this out then. Nick, why don't you tell everybody where they can find the New York Patriot?
You can find the New York Patriot and the Occult Rejects on all major podcasts. You can find the Occult Rejects on YouTube, and then you can find the Occult Rejects and the New York Patriot show on BitChute and Rumble. And that's about it.
Yeah, and definitely check that stuff out. You've been having a lot of really interesting stuff going on lately, for sure. Yeah, and thank you for asking me to come on and co-host with you on occasion. I really enjoy that.
I really have
like those boozy bros, the guys that we had that conversation.
I think I brought that hat with me.
Yeah,
they sent me a hat.
yeah. Well, we're gonna get together with them soon, and maybe we can run some of these results past them. And
I actually thought about sending them the shit. I forgot anything.
Yeah, and see what they have to say about it. So, Andy, you have your own nickname on our show.
Oh God, what is that?
Oh, it's real sad. It's just called Deep Share Andy.
Oh, okay. Well, that's pretty typical.
Deep Share Andy. Even though I just told everybody where they can find you, why don't you tell everybody where they can find you?
Well, I'm at the Deep Share on Twitter and Instagram. On Facebook, you can find me at the Deep Share Podcast or Andy Rouse, one or the other. I've kind of overtaken my personal account with all my crazy conspiracy theories. So
yeah, you might as well go with it, right?
I need more friends because I have lost all my original ones.
Have you? That's sad.
No. Some. But I got my website up and running now, thedeepshare.com. And you can listen, watch. The links are all there. Also, I'm trying to kind of raise money, but I'm bashful about it.
No, listen, stop right there.
Anything.
Stop right there.
Raise money for what?
Stop.
A documentary I'm trying to do.
Stop being bashful about it. Stop being bashful about it because this is a really cool thing. So, we've got a few extra minutes. Tell the listeners what you got going on and what you're planning, because I think it's a great idea.
It better be good.
Well, there's a lot of questions surrounding the research I'm doing, but not a lot of input in the right direction. I want a lot of critical thinking. I want a lot of critical questions about what I'm looking at. And I'm getting a lot more confirmation that I'm getting critical, challenges.
Okay.
So I want more challenges, and I think a good challenge would be to go to Scandinavia and ask hard questions. So I want to go to where the research is pointing me, and I want to go back to old Europe. I want to go to Finland and Sweden and meet up with friends and talk to a lot of interesting people and look at a lot of ancient sites that are claimed to be something that history claims they're not. So I want to try to find some answers that previous documentaries and series haven't asked before and see where it takes me. So
About history and origins of people?
Yeah, well, I get into a specific realm of alternative history that a lot of people just kind of don't look at or haven't heard of. And it's called the Bach Saga. And I'd say it's a very important keystone, whether it's 100% true or even just a little bit true. There's something to it that echoes a story that's alternative in a way that it fucks with all the other alternative theories and makes them look controlled.
It's a super interesting subject, for sure, the Bach Saga.
Like I said before, that Graham Hancock, Mr. Netflix, the only place of the world that he doesn't look at for ancient megalithic structures is Europe and Scandinavia. He stays away from all the, dare I say, white people, because that's not where the narrative is going.
You can't say white anymore.
Andy, real quick,
racist.
How many years ago does this Bach Saga begin? Just to give the listeners, because when they hear, it's like, oh my God, the Earth wasn't even here then. I disagree. I am very
million years ago. I
am very interested in it.
Absolutely here 100 million years ago. But that is what they claim, and it's big numbers. And I don't even take it at face value. There's a lot of elements of the Bach Saga that not only seem that they're just hard to fuck with, but they line up with other themes in ancient history that they just echo the same theme that they're all. It's similar to what we claim in alternative history, but it's unique in a way, like I said before, where it's like the urban legend says one thing, and it's like, oh, okay, so that was the kernel truth in it. It always goes back to kind of an Occam's razor sort of thing, where things were a little bit more simple than we assume it was. You know how the Da Vinci Code describes the Grail, right? And the big movie, right? It was a big Hollywood movie. It's like, the Grail. Well, that shape is an upside-down triangle, and it's the female womb and all that. That kind of mentality where, we think it means this, but it's more this.
When it could have just been a cup the whole time.
Well, that's the no, Ron, come on, that's the opposite. No, that's the whole point, is that the symbol, it's more allegorical than we think usually, but we now have this argument between allegorical and literal. But when it comes to religion, the literalists think that all the crazy allegories are literal. But that's not what the actual argument should be. The argument should be whether this was telling a real story or not, no matter what it described. And what we're finding more and more and more is that these ancient mythologies were telling real historical stories, but titles given to gods and mythological creatures throughout time and across geography were actually human names, titles, and places. So it throws everything into confusion. And a lot of times when I deliver this, it comes across like I don't believe in anything mystical or spiritual because I'm trying to like take away all the gods and mythological stuff. I'm taking away from what they, quote unquote, have handed to us to account for our mystical experiences.
Yeah, peeling back the layers of many, many, many years, right, to try to come up with. Yeah. I mean, it's easy to say to come up with the truth, but to come up with these things where all these pieces and parts actually fit together pretty well.
Yeah, you can't fuck with etymology. You can't fuck with linguistics. And, fairy comes from the same place that pharaoh comes from. Like, what do we believe there? Is it about a magical little creature, or is it a god, or is it a man? These are questions that are never asked, whether we're talking about skeptics and cynics or conspiracy theorists and believers.
I'll tell you something I would love to get together and talk about is as you kind of talked about, you touched on a little bit earlier in the episode, is how the North American continent and the African continent, meaning, AKA Egypt and North America, were basically together at one time, because we hear the stories about all the Egyptian artifacts that were discovered in the Grand Canyon. And we're not going to get into it any further than that, but that is super fucking mind blowing to me.
Yeah, and how we can get into how they claim that Freemasonry is owed to North America, not Egypt.
Mm. Or what about the whole idea that Florida was Egypt at one time?
Shout out to Narco Longo.
Yeah. Dr. Longo, listen, somebody else I want to get on the show. Super interesting information there because, I don't think what we see right in front of us, I don't think what we see with our own eyes is what really was there. And I think history is way different than what we've been told, of course, indoctrinated in school.
It's all lies.
And that's why what Nick does, a lot of that stuff super interests me because it's like, okay, it's a lot easier for people to not believe it than it is for them to absorb that information and ponder the what ifs. Because, listen, I think magic is everywhere. I think occultism is everywhere. In these lost societies from an Earth that I am a firm believer in was way more advanced than it is even that now. Multiple times, and we keep crashing and burning. And in the way that everything's going in the world right now, I would welcome another turning, as they say. we're in the turning now.
We're in the fourth
because
turning.
This shit needs to burn to the ground. Because I think we're just seeing the beginning.
Just give me a little place
craziness
on top of the mountain before it happens, okay?
Well, we got plenty of room to pitch tents here, and we got plenty of water. So you don't.
I'm pitching a tent right now.
We're like, 4,000, 3,000, 2,000, something above sea level right here, so we're kind of safe.
Actually, right here, I think about 700.
Okay, so not that good. All right, we got to go higher.
This is also a cursed land, so we don't want to be here. When shit hits the fan.
We're about to find out how cursed it might be.
Yeah, so listen, everybody. That's what we're going to do. We're going to end this real quick. You know where to find the New York Patriot, and you know where to find Andy Deepshare, and you know where to find us, Ron from New England, and the Wicked Planet Podcast on Instagram. You can find Mr. Buckley at Tristan.A.Buckley on Instagram. Go ahead.
Quick, I want to say thank you so much from the bottom of my heart for coming on, you slime balls.
Dude, thank you so much for having us in fucking studio.
It was really fun.
Totally different experience.
Andy, I'm sorry I threw bottle caps at you.
I welcome your bottle caps.
Hey,
you gave me the invitation to throw shit at you.
Absolutely.
So I gotta take it. Definitely looking forward to the paranormal thing we're doing. And also, when I get my shit set up to do stuff at home, I would love to come on your guys' show at some point.
Fuck yeah!
When I'm set up.
This is like a 3-year request, so
he's had the stuff. He's had the stuff to do it for a while.
I'm busy,
I gotta
motherfucker.
find my notebook with all my Buckley questions now.
All right,
I'm busy, but
all right. So
again, thank you for coming on. It was really great.
I had a great time. Thank you.
All right, so and you can find Ron from NE, Nick and Andy. All of us are on X, Twitter X or Trickster. Or what does JJ call it? Trickster. Our buddy JJ, we do shows with.
What is it? I forgot what he calls it. The interwebs. I forgot.
No, I think he calls Twitter trickster.
I feel like Twitter is like enough.
Anyways,
of an insult
so anyways, go out there, join all the Telegram chats. I'm going to put all this shit in the show notes, so you don't have to look too far. Let us know what you thought of the episode. Email us at the wickedplanetpodcast@gmail.com.
Hopefully we weren't too racist for you.
Yeah, it'd be fine. So listen, thanks, guys.
joking.
So this is the first time we've had other podcasters in the studio to get together and do a show.
Won't be the last, motherfucker.
Really good time.
We're
really
very
good time.
loud.
Yeah, well, we've had a pretty good afternoon so far, and it's 9:00 at night, and
We gotta go search for some ghosts.
we're gonna go look for some ghosts. So
And Sasquatch.
stand by for the results. In the meantime, Ron from New England signing off.
Buckley.
Thanks for listening to this episode of the Deep Share Podcast. If you want to hear more, then hit that subscribe button. Follow me on all the social places. And remember, think for yourself, but don't always believe what you think. Till next time.
Human sacrifice, dogs and cats living together. That's hysteria. Enough, I get the point.
You have meddled with the primal forces of nature. And you will atone.
What do we know? What do we know? If I know what we know, then I can tell you what we know, and if someone else knows, okay? I mean...